Ireland has voted. The die has been cast. And inside ballot boxes across the country, the fate of 686 candidates has been decided. Welcome to the start of News Talk's election 2024 coverage. I'm Sean Defoe and I'll be with you all throughout Count Weekend, as will everyone at News Talk across all 43 constituency counts. We're going to be joined throughout the show by my panel in studio, and we'll have live reactions to the exit poll from the political parties. Henry McKean's been out talking to voters, so we'll hear from him later on. And you can get in touch with us on WhatsApp 087 1400 106. But first, let's get into it. The exit poll is in. Joint exit poll, Irish Times, RTE, TG Cahir, Trinity College, 5,000 people across the country. And the largest share of the vote in the country has gone to Sinn Féin at 21.1%. Fine Gael, the closest of margins behind, at 21% of the vote, and Fianna Fáil in third of the largest parties, according to this poll, on 19.5%. To run you through the other parties, the Soc Dems have 5.8%, Labour at 5%, the Green Party at 4%, Solidarity People Before Profit 3.1% of the vote, Aontú 3.6%, 2.2% for Independent Ireland, and 14.6% for combined independents and others. So it is tight at the top. The three largest parties all within 1.6 percentage points of each other. I suppose the immediate analysis is the surprise is seeing Fianna Fáil as the third of those parties. The campaign, the general consensus had been that they were going well, that Micheál Martin was going to be the Taoiseach after this. This poll throws that into doubt. Sinn Féin falling on its vote from 2020 by about 3 percentage points, but still the lead by the slimmest of margins. And I think Fine Gael will be very happy with this poll number. All of the talk of the last few days had been Fine Gael slide, Simon Harris in trouble, the gaffes throughout the campaign, but 21% is quite a respectable vote for them. So we are joined in studio by my panel, Mick Clifford, special correspondent with the Irish Examiner, Regina Doherty, Fine Gael MEP for Dublin, and Daithí Doolan, Sinn Féin candidate for Dublin South Central. Thanks for coming in at 10 o'clock after, I'm sure, what's been a long day and a long few weeks to actually chat through all these results. Daithí, we'll start with you. 21.1%. Are you happy enough?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, I just want to thank the hundreds of thousands of people who voted in the election, and particularly those who voted for Sinn Féin. Positive, progressive politics, the politics of change. We're now, according to the exit poll, and no votes have been counted, we're the largest party in the state, the largest party in the island. We'll see what the votes throw up tomorrow, but I would be confident that we'll improve on our seats last time, because if you remember, we might be down a couple of percent in the exit poll, but we're running 71 candidates, which is the most we've ever ran. And I think the message we were bringing to the doors right up until 5 to 10 tonight was positive, progressive change, healthcare, housing, education, and building for United Ireland. And I was cycling right across Dublin South Central today, from Kimmage to Crumlin to Ballyfermot to Cherry Orchard, and people were responding very, very positively. And I thought it was a good day for us. That was what we were picking up. But most importantly, that we need to ensure that translates into seats, because we have a big task ahead of us in fixing the healthcare system, fixing the housing crisis, fixing the childcare crisis, and laying building a foundation for United Ireland. But we'll wait and see tomorrow what that throws up. There will be a lot of, I think, long counts, because we're running several more candidates, 71 of them, and I want to wish each and every one of them all the very best. They ran powerful, positive campaigns, and we look forward to reaping our harvest tomorrow. And I want to also maybe take a moment to thank all the other candidates who stood in this election as well. It's a brave person who puts their name forward and goes out on the doors day in, day out, night in, night out, week in, week out, and knocks on the doors asking for a vote. But I'm very happy with the 21.1%. We will be happy, and we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, 21.1 for Sinn Féin. Regina Doherty, if you'd said 21 this morning, would you have taken it?
Absolutely. First of all, I just want to concur with what Daithí said, to congratulate everybody who ran, because politics isn't easy. And everybody that does it because they have hugely good, positive intentions and want to do better for their community. So congratulations to everybody. 21% is wow. And you know, the reason I probably would have taken less this morning, because the last week has been a difficult week for all of us. A lot of challenges obviously have been fielded our way. But the worry then starts this morning is because, we went into this election with 80 candidates and only something like 17 or 18 of them were already elected. We had so many incumbents. And then you start to worry, is that really going to have an impact? And now we can see that 21%, as close as a hair's breadth to Sinn Féin can be, means that people did respond to their candidates. And so just because we had a wealth of new people, they weren't necessarily new to the communities, and they had such a breadth of experience. And we're not going to have a really invigorated, very different parliamentary party whenever we meet this week. But just to say well done to everybody, and to everybody for running a clean campaign. Like, it wasn't, other campaigns I've been involved in have been dirty. This was a relatively clean campaign, even amongst opponents, so I think that's something to be celebrated. And tomorrow, I would expect, probably because we've been in power with Fianna Fáil for the last while, that the transfers for Fine Gael will be very different to the lonely place that we were in 2020, because we didn't have very many people transferring to us back then, and we lost seats. And I lost my own seat in 2020, and it's a lonely place because you do take it personally, and everybody tells you not to, but you do take it personally. So I would hope tomorrow that we might see plus the 21% on the basis of that the transfers come to us from
that there might be that seat bonus there that wasn't there last time around. Just to compare it to last time around, so for people who are tuning in, the exit poll shows Sinn Féin this time in 2024 on 21.1%, Fine Gael on 21%, and Fianna Fáil then in third of the larger parties at 19.5%. To compare it to where things landed in 2020, as in the final results, Sinn Féin were at 24.5%, Fianna Fáil were at 22%, and Fine Gael was round about 21%, just a shade under 21%. Mick, that will be the surprise, won't it, that Fianna Fáil is the third of these parties?
Absolutely, Sean. And I'd just like to echo as well, in terms of anybody who stood for this election, I have to say, particularly the way politics is today, particularly how we've seen democracy has been eroded in other countries. Anybody who stands, I think, fair play to them. It's a serious thing going forward. Absolutely. Big surprise purely on the basis that I think there's a general consensus that Micheál Martin had a very good campaign, unlike, I say, how he campaigned in 2020 and 2016. Mary Lou McDonald had a very good campaign, no question about it. Simon Harris was campaigning since he became Taoiseach. He was running out of steam, I think, very understandable on one level, but I think that will be the surprise. Now, I would have a few caveats about it. First of all, in terms of transfers, Fianna Fáil, I reckon that there's a toxicity about Fianna Fáil after a crash, totally understandably, as far as most people are concerned, they wrecked the economy. That really fed through in 2011. It was still there in 2016. It was to a fair extent in 2020 as well. I suspect that toxicity isn't there, so they could do very well in transfers, particularly as they have a large number of incumbents. The second element to that is the transfers between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, whether that will be increased this time around. And then you have, but apart from that, I mean, it is, as people said, the only other element to it is, if you look at between the three main parties, the percentage that's represented in this compared to what was the final outcome the last time, you've about 6 or 7% gone somewhere else out of those three. Presumably, I would say to the greatest extent towards independence rather than any of the smaller parties. And in terms of the smaller parties, I suppose on the face of it, the Soc Dems and Labour will be relatively pleased to be up around that level, the two of them. But I'd suspect you're talking about a very big cohort of independents.
Yeah, well, I think one point, if I may.
Go on, Tommy.
I think it's interesting what Mick said about the transfers. I think if you take a step back and recalibrate, I think the transfers will be very left-aligned and to the more conservative elements. I think Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael will transfer amongst themselves. And I think what we noticed in the European election and in our own South Central in the last general election, the left voted left and stayed left in the transfers. And I think Sinn Féin are a lot more transfer friendly. And you'll notice that within our own candidates, because we ran multiple candidates, including my own area of South Central, but also with the Soc Dems, some of the progressive independents, maybe even with the Greens and Labour, more transfers to us because we'll last the race longer than has been in previous years.
That's true. Definitely. I'd say there's definitely a case
There's a left-right divide there, which is healthy for politics.
It is. And Sinn Féin wasn't transfer friendly perhaps up until 2020, but I'd say definitely that's.
I mean, like in 1987, we got 35,000 votes. In 2020, we got over 500,000. So you're taking in a stronger base there. We're far more transfer friendly. We work well with the Social Democrats, PB for Profit, and Progressive Independents in Dublin City Council in the form of the Alliance. So I think that may be reflected in the transfers tomorrow.
Yeah, it could come in, and if you do look at the combined Labour, Sockdown, Green, PBP, you're getting around 18% just off the top of my head. So that is, you could see that rolling in. But I mean, Regina, it is sort of hard to see where you get that core group of left-wing seats that could potentially form a government.
Yeah, but also, like, a lot of those people benefited from the fact that Sinn Féin didn't run as many candidates as they should have or could have maybe in the last election. That's not true, obviously, in this election. So, like, I would expect, and this is only me judging on what happened in the locals and the European elections, when you look at when Green candidates went out, some of their vote did go to the left, as in the Green probably played it about 30% to the Labour candidates, but Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael got about 20% from the Green candidate. We got good transfers from Labour people, but we got really, really good transfers from Fianna Fáil, and vice versa. They took, they got really good transfers from us. That never happened before. I mean, I don't think...
Yeah.
I don't honestly ever remember, and I come from a Fine Gael household all my life, my father and my granny before him. I don't think we would have ever contemplated transferring to Fianna Fáil. That's entirely different now.
It's a different reality.
Yeah.
You have Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael who are now seeing almost, I won't say a union, but are definitely coalescing.
They have been together
They're
for 4
coalescing
years.
on
No,
the same
the last
sphere
couple of weeks
politics.
has shown very much how much of the differences there are between us. To
Very
be fair.
fake.
But anyway, I
Fake
do.
and all
I'll
just
pop
fake.
it
And they have to
We're
invent
certainly-
the way.
We're centrist parties,
There's very
obviously,
little
and we have the
difference,
best
though,
of
in fairness.
intentions, obviously.
While on the
for-
left, there's a far more transfer-friendly environment there now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dahi, when it comes to it, so what? Obviously, 6 months ago, Sinn Féin were 12% in the polls in the local and Europeans. You had a torrid time. What's been the transformation between the two?
I think what I'd have to say is coming out of the locals was very, very difficult. Then I think the media had us dead and buried a few weeks ago, like 10, 12 weeks
The
ago.
polls you didn't.
I think, and the opinion polls. But then when we drill down into the polls, we noticed the polls were not reflecting the reality. And I'm saying this that in the working class communities where we've a strong base, in the locals they didn't and don't tend to come out. And with the way the polls are orchestrated, if you didn't vote in the local election, your vote didn't count in a poll. So if you didn't vote in the last locals, it didn't count. You had to vote in the last locals, and that skewed them against us. And then when the momentum of the general election came in, when people focused on the issues of childcare, housing, education, the climate, poverty, United Ireland, when those issues were thrown on the table and people focused on it, they liked the message they heard coming to the door because we re-engaged with the issues.
Got that core vote out that didn't come? Because turnout looks to be down across the country. It looks to be maybe below 60%.
I certainly felt today and during the campaign, our message resonated. People focused on it. They hadn't been focusing on it during the locals. Hand up. People were not mobilised. Then after the locals, people obviously disengaged. The polls, yes, we dipped in the polls, but that was not the message we were getting on the doors. And then when we went back out for the general election, people were enthused. People believed. They saw Mary Lou's leadership despite the attacks in the media. They found she showed steely leadership. And then we found on the doors, we went out with intrepidation after the locals, I tell you, after the abuse and the threats we faced from the far right. But we saw them down, went back out on the doors, and it was transformative. People were engaging on the issues that they needed to, and they liked what they heard.
There's another issue too, though, in fairness. There was a lower turnout in the Europeans, and I think Sinn Féin proportionally got hit far worse in that and the locals. But there was another issue, and that was immigration.
Yeah.
And immigration has been central to Sinn Féin's fall in the polls over the last year or so. Within people who would have voted Sinn Féin, I think whoever said it, I think in fairness to them, they put it right, that if in certain areas, if you saw the tricolour in 2020, it was signifying a Sinn Féin area. If you saw it now, it was a far right. During the local elections, that immigration issue was at its zenith. There were flashpoints around the place. The far right were coming out. They were joining in protests. There was all that sort of thing going on. It was fevered to some extent then. That, thankfully, has died off.
But the issue hasn't gone away. The
issue hasn't gone away.
And it's interesting how, and I've been racking my brains about this, how 6 months ago, people were, as Mick says, in fever pitch around this issue. 6 months on, there's still crisis homelessness. There's still asylum seekers living in tents. But suddenly, the dial got toned down on it. The other issue is in the local election, we didn't have a bad local election. Our vote went up. Our percentage went up, our seats went up. It wasn't just as good as we thought. Yeah. And I think people spun it that we had a really poor local election. We didn't. It was our second best.
12% was very poor, though.
It was our second best
by the
local election.
Of 36% in the polls 18 months ago.
It was our second best local election if you check the stats. Second best local election ever. after 2004, the high of 2014. And then we bounced back, we focused, and also I think people view local elections, in all fairness, very different than general elections.
Yeah.
They don't mind giving their city councillor, and I speak as a city councillor, a bit of a bashing at the local election, while with the general election, they focus on key issues.
So Regina, we've had some texts in. The one texter saying there is anger out there over housing in particular, particularly in the north of Dublin, and I think we'll see that tomorrow. But at 21%, I mean, Fine Gael would be thereabouts where they were last time after 13 years of government. Were you feeling that anger when you were out, and why do you think it hasn't manifested in more of a drop?
There wasn't, and I say this honestly to you, there wasn't any anger on the doors. You got very localised, specific issues that people were very upset about, and you spoke to them. But in the main, and actually I was kind of worrying about this, in the main, people were very polite, very friendly. In the beginning of our campaign, the vast majority of people were talking to us about our new leader and about how nice, you know, they found him and how honest and hardworking he was. Actually, with the concern, would you ever tell him to slow down? You know, like, but there was a real kind of maternalness towards it or something. I know that probably sounds silly, but the last kind of maybe week to 10 days, people have just become very polite. And actually, I was getting a little concerned about that maybe we weren't being talking about the issues, you know, as much as we might have been a couple of weeks ago. But there wasn't anger. So I've been through other elections where there's been palpable anger and people are really, really narky at you. And I know that people are really concerned about housing. They're really concerned about health. There's other issues specifically. We got the opportunity to talk about disabilities in the last week that we mightn't have had the chance to talk about them had we not had that event on Friday
The
last week in
incident, as it
Clontarf.
might be
But you
known
know
as.
what? There's never an ill wind that doesn't blow some good. We've had an opportunity now to talk about Section 39s, and it's long beyond time that it needs to be resolved. And maybe now it actually will be resolved, you know. But the anger wasn't there. And so therefore people, and what am I looking at? Nearly 40% of people do think that Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and if you include the 4 or 5% of the Greens, think that we have done a
It's
decent
a long but
enough
short,
job.
though, Regina, of where Fianna
is.
Fáil and Fine Gael thought they'd be in terms of having a base to form a government. It's a long. I mean, if this comes true, would you be talking about 20 seats short of an overall majority? And 88 is the magic figure. Would you really have to be talking about 1991 to make anything anyway secure? It's a long way.
You're
No, actually, I don't agree with you,
40%.
Mick.
High
It's
70s, early
40%.
80s.
And when you think societally, how far the great have fallen since the 70s, 80s, and 90s when I was growing up, we now have a transformative society where there is a left-right divide. There is a left being led by Sinn Féin and others, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael together. But also, I think the other point I'd like to make is some of the commentary, must be said by the media, was so far removed from reality. Ivan Yates, when he made that awful comment that I would have to find a map to find Dublin South Central. I've been living there 13 years. I've been a councillor for 10, topped the poll in 3 elections. For him to say that showed how removed some of these self-opinionated people are. And and that annoyed people. It annoyed people in my area who hadn't a clue what he was on about. And I think he needs some commentators need to take a long, hard look at themselves when they're casting judgment on elections.
Yeah, well, I put that to him actually in the final episode of Calling It. So, and he kind of said sorry, not sorry, which is, you know, Ivan Yates' way of doing that. So, which people can listen to. Some of the texts in as well on 087 1400 106 is the WhatsApp line. Can we trust these polls though? Hashtag skeptic. Well, I've actually been comparing to the last poll. So, in the exit poll in 2020 had Fianna Fáil bang on. It underpolled Sinn Féin by 2.3% and overpolled Fine Gael by 1.5%. Slight overpoll on the smaller parties. In 2016, it overpolled Fine Gael by 0.6%, underpolled Fianna Fáil by 1.5% and overpolled Sinn Féin by 1.4%. And then in 2011, got Fine Gael bang on, underpolled Fianna Fáil by 2.3% and a slight overpoll of Sinn Féin, but within the margin of error, which I think is 1.6% on this. It's relatively small compared to others because of
1.4.
1.4. There you go. We are going to be back with our panel and with calling some of the candidates across the country who are anxiously waiting tonight to see what the result will be over the weekend. Stay with us. New Party are 0.6, Independent Ireland at 2.2%, and then Independents and others as a grouping 14.6. We're going to be back with our panel shortly, but on the line is the Aontú leader, Peadar Tobin. Peadar, 3.6% nationally. Are you happy enough with that?
Yeah, no, we're very happy with that so far. And as you say, there could be a little bit of movement on it tomorrow as well. So that's practically a doubling of our vote from 2020. And it does put us in position, I think, where we could see two or three or four seats maybe come our direction in relation to it. I will say as well, the issue of state funding is very important to us too, because we just missed out on that in 2020. And, you know, to operate a well-organised party with no state funding is damnable hard, to be honest. It's really, really hard. So this puts us in a position where hopefully now we'll be able to employ full-time staff as well, which will make things a lot easier going forward.
When you look at those extra seats across the country, where are you targeting? Because it's hard to see where you take 3.6% and make it a breakthrough.
Yes, there's no doubt a difficulty we have is that we don't have, let's say, concentrated votes around household names in the same way as far more established political parties. That is going to be a difficulty for us. But in the likes of Cavan Monaghan, we missed out by about 1,800 votes in the last general election. You know, this type of doubling of vote would I think, you know, really help us there. In Dublin West, we came fourth in the local election, winning 2 council seats. And it's a 5-seater, so that should place us in a good position there. And also in the likes of Mayo, we have a very good candidate there, Paul Lawless. There's light on the horizon in relation to this, there's no doubt.
Where, when you talk about the financing of things, I mean, what does getting that financing mean in terms of money, in terms of staff, in terms of scaling up?
Yeah, so people probably don't realise this in that obviously we have had no state funding at all. So outside of my constituency, 2 constituency staff, we've had 1 full-time staff as a political party. And that means, you know, your whole organisational development, your policy output, you know, even your media engagement, that's down to like basically 1 person, etc. So this would put us far more, you know, on a structured basis. We'd probably be able to employ about 7, 8, 9 full-time staff, and that will make a significant difference in relation to how we develop. It'll probably add another 10 years onto my life as well.
Well, I was just going to say, everyone talked about Simon Harris being a one-man campaign. You were the literal one-man campaign.
Well, it is. It's like, to be honest, there was days during that election campaign where I was kind of, you know, spending 2, 3, 4 hours writing manifestos, trying to get out in the local canvas, and then preparing for media engagements. And you're just trying to do everything, you know, yourself. Now, in fairness, we do have a lot of decent volunteers who give a lot of their time. And one of the things I've learned probably from my previous party is to build a good organisation. So, like, you know, when we founded this first, I did about 56 public meetings across the country. We built up of about 2,000 members, organised 60 Cummins, who then got about kind of working in their local areas. And it's that kind of grassroots development which has also fed into this level of growth as well. So it hasn't been easy, but hopefully now, given you know, roughly 3.6, it'll be easier going forward.
Yeah, when we spoke during the campaign, you said you were going to have a pint or 2 tonight. I'd say you might have 1 or 2 more after that result, will you?
We will have to hold off now because of this interview, but I'll be jumping straight into it.
Well, I'm very sorry to keep you from your pints. You're very good to take the call. Peadar Tobin, leader of Aontú. Thanks everybody for talking to us on News Talk this evening. Well, I wonder what you've been saying, voters. You can get in touch 087 1400 106. But Henry McKean has been out to some of the polling stations as they closed in Dublin Bay South, asking who people voted for and why.
I voted for Labour because I'm sick of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael.
So you voted Labour.
Yeah.
Who else did you vote for?
I did give a vote to Sinn Féin.
You gave them your number 2, number 3?
Number 3.
And who got number 2?
Number 2, Labour, and then it was people for profit. And no, I just liked the people who came to my door. They were very charismatic, they had some good ideas, and they seemed to know a lot about local issues.
And that helped you make up your mind?
Yep, they were good. Much more than the Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael people.
Simon Harris is a very nice young fella. He has done his time in the Oireachtas. person as a candidate, so she got her number one. Sinn Féin, even though I'm a first-time
it does
voter
seem
for
like
Sinn
there's
Féin,
a
has had big support in this country
clear
for the last
split
couple of cycles of
between
elections, and it would be unfair to keep them out of power at this point. They have to be given a chance. I would
the left and
believe
the right.
strongly in
Seems
Mary
like
Lou being our first female
urban
Taoiseach.
areas,
I think she's the only person that can actually
the
deliver.
left has
So
gotten
I voted number one independent, and it's the first time I've voted, given my number one vote to an independent, Kate O'Connell. I gave my second vote to Fianna Fáil and my third vote to Sinn Féin, and that is the first time I've ever voted Sinn Féin within my top three. But I work in an inner city community, and I hear the problems and the dilemmas that they face every day on the ground. And the Fianna Fáil Fine Gael coalition has not delivered for those people across the inner city, on the south side and the north side of Dublin. They don't seem to understand the issues they have. You have people who are becoming homeless on a daily basis. You have generations of people living on top of each other. They don't believe that the government understand their issues of the day, and I strongly believe that they don't, and certainly don't care in it. So I voted independent for the first time. I don't want to see a Fianna Fáil Fine Gael coalition again. I certainly would like to see Fianna Fáil Sinn Féin coalition, because I think the country needs a major change, and I think the voices of the inner city people of Dublin need to be heard.
So that was some people speaking to Henry McKean this evening about their vote. And interesting the way they're saying that Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin, because we've gotten some more data from that exit poll. It's regarding second preferences and where people are going to give those. 20% said they would vote for Fianna Fáil as a second preference, 20% for Fine Gael, and 17% for Sinn Féin, 14% to independents. Dahi, so on that point, I mean, if you're looking at a path to government for Sinn Féin, because you said, you've lots of work to do, but this isn't going to get you near it without a coalition partner. Is Fianna Fáil the natural home?
No, not at all. I mean, what I picked up from that piece we heard was, I don't know if you heard it, that people were saying they were voting for Sinn Féin. She said it was the first time in her life she ever voted for Sinn Féin, the top three. She voted Labour, Sinn Féin, and the woman at the end, Independent, and then Sinn Féin, because they saw the north and south inner city. I think that's replicated across the 26 counties. And I think what I see there is, again, what I said earlier on, this pattern. We're now far more transfer friendly from other left-wing parties. And that's what lacked in our politics in the state. And that's what we worked very, very hard in Dublin on, trying to build an alliance with other parties, even at city council, local authority level, working, getting the trust, the determination, the focus on delivering with other parties like the Social Democrats, People Before Profit, Progressive Independents and Labour if they wish to come on our side. They didn't. They went with Fianna Fáil in Dublin City Council. And that for us was a microcosm of the way things can be. And that's what I picked up from your discussion. People weren't really saying there, yeah, Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin are most palatable. For us, I mean, that is, for me, it's a non-runner. But look, the votes haven't been counted yet. We don't even know how many seats.
But
and also they might.
In terms of the numbers,
but if we look,
I wrote about this during the week.
Can I just cut my final point? Is the Social Democrats have doubled their percentages on the
land,
and I think they are the micro story of this election. And they are a party I could see us doing business with. Very comfortable. They're very reliable. They're consistent. They have a power of intellect behind some of their politics, and some of the people who are profit, and some of the progressive independents. Let's see how the numbers stack up. I think we could be looking at an exciting time ahead for the next few weeks.
Even what it looks like there in terms of what you're saying, Dahi, in terms of forming a government, you're talking Sinn Féin, People Before Profit, Soc Dems, Labour, Greens, and a number of independents. And personally, I would find it very difficult to see how that would melt.
That's on the percentage, but the transfers will be different.
Absolutely.
You arguing that their transfers essentially will elect more Sinn Féin candidates.
Absolutely. Oh, we'll have far more Sinn Féin candidates than the last.
I'd say a more likely scenario is if, for example, as things stand, it looks like Sinn Féin and Fine Gael are relatively even Steven. If that turns out, for example, even your scenario whereby there's far more transfer left, if Sinn Féin pull well ahead of Fine Gael, I think then you could have a scenario whereby the numbers dictate that there's a possibility, the type of one you're talking about, Dahi, or an alternative whereby you would have Sinn Féin, Fianna Fáil, and possibly, for example, the Soc Dems. In that scenario, you've opened up something, and the thing I would find interesting about that is there are people in Fianna Fáil who would, maybe with some luck, others with none whatsoever, about the idea of going in with Sinn Féin. But the leader, man who has dragged them for the last 10 years, Micheál Martin, is not of that disposition. And I know he says it's about policy. Personally, I'd say it's about culture and various other things. So do you end up with a scenario whereby Micheál Martin in that kind of situation decides, well, if this is the way it's going, this is the way it's going, it's not for me for various things, and he steps aside.
Or they might jettison him.
Yeah.
In an attempt
or he'd step
to
aside
make
or
themselves more
We haven't even
accountable.
counted about it.
We're sacking me off.
No. I said they might do, because that has been part of some of the discussion points out there in the political world. But also, let's have the votes counted. Let's see what happens
before we sack
Let's
anyone.
see who we'll engage with.
My God, okay, it might be fun to sit here and decide what we're going to do on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. But as Larry says, we haven't counted the vote. But it's really
We're
interesting.
still counting the votes on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah,
That's happened in the past too.
Yeah.
What's really interesting for me to see is that we had 26 constituencies where we didn't have an incumbent going into this. So we had brand new people from all walks of life and all professions. And one of the things that people told us is that was going to hugely damage us, particularly, media commentators over the years, political analysts. And I can see now, obviously, not just from the first preferences, notwithstanding plus or minus, the percentage that it might be different, but the 20% transfers thereafter means that those incumbents ran really good campaigns on the ground. And okay, they mightn't have featured in the RT primetime debates or whatever, but they were really well received. And the ground campaigns that our teams ran were really, really well slick, really well resourced from HQ. I mean, I think, to be honest with you, I've run in every election since nearly 20 years now at this stage. This is my first one that I haven't been directly involved in. The support that we got from all facets of our organisation was absolutely excellent.
I think on a cross-party basis, the truth is as well that what that shows is young people are enthusiastic about politics. But there's this awful habit amongst old fuddy-duddies to look down their noses at young people. They're not interested, not involved. You look at them, they're all standing on street corners. Nothing could be further from the truth. And I think from a Fine Gael point of view, that they've young people standing, putting themselves forward. And again, I applaud young people. What I saw
think a lot
today,
of that was down to Simon Harris, if I'm really honest with you.
but also young people themselves. Give young people credit themselves for choosing a life in politics. I saw today, particularly 2 youth projects, and Bosco's, a youth service in our area in Drimna, running a mini election campaign with posters on the issues that count for young people. And I think older people need to open their eyes and listen to young people, respect them and respond to their needs as well.
Well, it's a sort of an interesting one, isn't it? Because we heard that 400,000 people have registered this year to vote for the first time, and yet we're seeing turnout down. So where's that shaking out?
Maybe the older people aren't coming out.
Maybe the rain put them off.
I don't know. I mean,
it's hard to know. Well, we can't know. This is utter
we don't know. I
speculation,
mean, but I do think that young people are enthusiastic about politics, and I think that needs to be respected.
And the other interesting thing about turnout down is in that kind of scenario, if it turns out to be, generally, previously the expectation would have been that would benefit the likes of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael.
Yeah.
Quite obviously, it hasn't in this instance.
Depends on the other person or somebody else mentioned a point to me today that the percentage might be down, but the numbers could be up because the population and the number of people registered. So again, there's a bit of speculation. We need to unpack that and see it for what it is. The percentage might be down, but more young people might have voted.
Well, now I can attest that because I have 4 kids at home, but the youngest, this was her first vote. She skipped into the polling booth this evening, like as excited. I don't think I've ever been that excited about voting, but she really was enthused and engaged. She was involved in our European election campaign during the summer. She really, even though she'd lived in my house for the last 18 years, I think this was the first time that issues really became, very important to her. So
Great to hear that, and I think we need to encourage that. We need to listen to young people, give them space to share their. It might be my type of my issues, but what I saw in our area, and again, there was another. There is Solace, a youth project in our area, and they were encouraging, cajoling, supporting young people going to the polls, and that pays off because that gives a mistake in their community, their society, whoever they elect or not elect. But then they will view all of us a bit differently and will engage with the political system, and that can only be good for our communities.
Yeah. Interesting among the smaller parties, Regina, there's sort of a clear hierarchy, really, with the Soc Dems at 5.8, Labour at 5, and then the Greens down at 4. That would suggest it's not going to be a wipeout for the Greens, even though they'll be fighting for any seat that they get. And there is a coherent bloc if they do, as Roger O'Gorman and Ivana Bacik says, to negotiate with themselves first before anyone else.
Well, you could see between those 3 parties, they might have 20 seats. Like, that is a formidable bloc, notwithstanding obviously Sinn Féin, champion themselves of being a party on the left, people before profit solidarity, clearly. But that is a formidable bloc if they do or can work together. Now, I don't know about the Soc Dems and the Labour Party. They haven't had much joy in, befriending each other over the last
sense
while.
of power
But they
will help them cross that bridge.
Maybe because
if you see yourself at the cabinet table,
If the ministerial cars come power, and so far indications are like in the last election that they'd nearly have preferred to stay out. But if the Soc Dems want power, exactly,
there's a slight. I notice in their tone in the last few months a different, almost they're willing to work with others. What I actually found surprising, Labour Party were a bit reticent about engaging with other parties. I think they have a little bit of a reality check
coming in post. Yeah, we're going to talk about independence after the break. A couple of your texts in, one very negative one, who's negative for everybody. This texter says, if these results are right, Sinn Féin, huge lead for years, in the dust. Fine Gael blew the Harris bounce and Fianna Fáil failed to capitalise on either. Another one, on turnout, general election 2020 was on a Saturday, wasn't it? Would weekend voting encourage higher turnout? Interesting that the analysis last time was actually that it didn't do that, and it brought it down, but it's an interesting point. Keep your text coming in, 087 1400 106. We're going to be back with more of our election special after this.
Go over to this box over here. Great. Now. You hold my One, two, three. Job done. I've enjoyed this campaign. I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed talking to people that length and breadth of the country, but most importantly, I've enjoyed putting forward my policy vision. As a new leader, as a new Taoiseach, I've always wanted the opportunity to talk with the people of Ireland about how we can make our great country even better. And now I'm looking forward to the people having their say. Looking forward to working right up till 10 o'clock tonight, till the polls close, and then I'm looking forward to the days, weeks, and hopefully months and years ahead.
I'm going to bring you into the RTE Election Results Centre. So this is how we used to do it. Everything would be written down for all the parties, pen and paper on this big wall. All of that information is still going to happen. But now, let me show you how we do it now. We have 33 feeds coming in from every count centre across the country. That's 43 constituencies that are going to be covered from there. All the information coming in here that we feed to online, that we feed to TV, feed results to radio and onto social as well, where you're getting this now. Let me bring you up here where we're going to do some live TV presenting tomorrow. So you'll see there's loads of cameras. And in these chairs, we're going to have our presenters, our experts, our guests, our political panellists. They're going to be bringing you all the information throughout the day, tallies, results, a whip around of all the reporters. It's like there's a cast of thousands, and I'm not over-egging it here because this place has been built up from the ground in 3 weeks, but planning has gone into it for months. And we have reporters in every constituency across the country for TV, radio, online, and that's 43 constituencies. And I'm going to bring you next door now so you can see Studio 5 as well. So this is Studio 5, and behind me is this magic wall of sorts, dynamic wall. We can have loads of information up there for you to get even more information from General Election 2024. The presenters and their guests will be sitting here, loads of cameras around, loads of lights, and hopefully loads of magic tomorrow.
Okay, where you dropping it? Load up. What's else here? Just this way. That's it.
I think I was taking a very large note of looking at this. We didn't really have has the ballot sitting in ballot boxes at the moment waiting to be counted tomorrow. So we have got lots of weeks.
They do play out fairly accurately, though. We went through it the last while, and they sometimes tend to underpoll Fianna Fáil, but it's all within the margin of error, which is 1.4%. It's not far off. It puts the sight of Micheál Martin back in the Taoiseach's office first, at least, looking a bit less likely than it was this morning.
Don't necessarily agree with that, Sean. I think 2016 the vote was estimated to be well outside the margin of error by 2 percentage points. As Peter Sarri said on RT Radio earlier on, Sinn Féin's vote was totally underestimated previous exit polls. So again, I'd take a note of caution, but letting this frame how we discussed the results before any ballots have been counted. What's clear to me is that Sinn Féin are down in 2020, even notwithstanding the margin of error that they are down. That's not immediately clear to me how Sinn Féin would make their way into the Taoiseach's office either. So again, I would take a very large note of caution about how we look at this, and I would just kind of point back to the fact that there are 43 individual constituencies that will determine the makeup of the overall Dáil.
How do you see the transfers between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil playing out? We've been chatting to it in studio. Could that lead to some sort of a seat bounce for the two parties?
Yeah, I think we'd be expecting, based on the patterns of what we saw in the local elections, and certainly looking at a very cursory glance at the second preferences that were captured in the exit poll, you'd be expecting some degree of kind of strength and transfers between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, certainly reflected on the empirical evidence of what we saw in the local elections, but also the second preferences that were expressed today. And given the fact that Irish constituencies, by European standards, are small in terms of the number of seats, that could lead to a seat bounce. But again, I'm very cautious of saying anything more than that, because in individual constituencies, geography can play a factor, personality can play a factor as well, about where the last seat will go and how transfers will play out.
What were you seeing turnout-wise in Dublin Midwest? It seems to be down across the country.
Yeah, it was down. Certainly, kind of, we're looking at the mid-50s, I think, overall, but then significant variation inside that. So a place like Palmerstown, Lucan Village would have been in the kind of the early to mid-50s. That would have been well down on 2020 by about 8 or 9 percentage points. But that seems to be consistent with the national trends that we're seeing across the country.
You have kind of been seen as Fianna Fáil's best hope for an extra seat in Dublin. No pressure, like?
No, but we've had a really positive local campaign. We've got everything on the pitch. We've had really good engagement, very positive engagement with folks that have opened the doors to us, and we have knocked on as many doors as we can. And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. In a general election, people want to choose a strong local voice for their constituency. They want to speak to someone to represent them, and that's been the focus of our campaign for the last 3 months. And that's what I hope will be reflected in the results tomorrow.
Finally, Shane, if this poll does bear out, it would be a nearly 3 percentage point loss for Fianna Fáil based on 2020. What's that down to?
I'm not going to read too much into that, Sean, because we haven't counted a single ballot paper yet. We're basing this on 5,000 interviews, an average of 140 people per constituency. That isn't something that I would necessarily make some sort of determination like that to frame the results of the weekend on the back of.
Okay. Shane Monaghan, Fianna Fáil candidate in Dublin Midwest, thanks for joining us. I'm sure we'll be chatting to you over the weekend. Fianna Fáil doth protest too much, maybe, Dahi?
What I see there is somebody who's in absolute denial of reality. I mean, we are fact. They are down on the exit poll. That's a fact. A fact. They're not the dominant force they once were. They're now, even according to the exit poll, again, no votes counted, but the exit poll shows they're in third place. Fianna Fáil in third place. That people need to tune in properly and hear the impact of this. And what he's failing to recognise is Sinn Féin. Every candidate bar one in the last election of Sinn Féin got elected, and we romped home. There will be a different election tomorrow. Yes, we might be down 2 or 3%, but our seats will go way up because we're running enough candidates with a very, very disciplined transfer strategy, transfer friendly from other parties. That will reflect a far greater increase of seats than the exit poll would determine. And with Fianna Fáil, they might be in a very, very different.
Would you get 40 seats in that day?
I'd have to. The caveat: maths was never my strong.
That's the thing. Like, Ireland's electoral system is like a very compelling example of how voting and like an electoral system can be as inclusive as possible, and like a decent representation of the reflective of like the populace's will. Obviously, like there's a ton of outdated voting systems in the UK, in America, in Canada, all over. But Ireland uses the single transferable vote system, which it basically allows voters to rank candidates by preference, and because of that, it ensures that like every ballot matters, because they don't simply just mark an X beside their preferred candidate, as is common in many other electoral systems, but they rank their candidates numerically, 1 for their top choice, 2 for their second, etc., etc. And it's this type of mechanism helps ensure that even if a voter's single first choice doesn't secure enough support to win, their vote is transferred to their next preference. And so it's a process it continues until a candidate reaches the required threshold to win. And so it's a method that basically guarantees that elections are representative of the people, rather than simply electing a candidate with the most votes in a winner takes all system. Like Ireland's electoral system allows for a redistribution of preference, which then better reflects the overall will of the people. There's a couple of examples of where this has like worked. In 1990, the presidential election, there was a good example of how the single transferable vote worked. There was the initial result showed Brian Lenihan, a seasoned politician, led with 44% of the vote, and then Mary Robertson with 39% of the vote. In a first past the post system, Lenihan would have won outright. However, under Ireland's system, the third candidate, Austin Curry, was eliminated, and his supporters' second choice were redistributed. And so the majority of these votes went to Robertson, who surpassed Lenihan to become Ireland's first female president. And so it's not only reflective of the broader electorate's preference, but also marked a transformative moment in this, like in Ireland's politics, because it shows how this system can work in the best way, and led to a lot of progress in Ireland. And so it really it offers like a lot of distinct advantages in comparison to other types of systems, because it ensures that nearly every single vote contributes to the final outcome. In other systems, like in the parliamentary system, basically only about 32% of the votes actually are needed to elect somebody. And so all of the other votes are effectively casted without any representation. In Ireland, about 80% of the votes have representation. And the single transferable vote also encourages collaboration. It is a far more democratic way of operating, because it encourages collaboration between political parties. Like on critical issues like climate change, there's been, in Ireland, the parties work together to attract second and third preference votes from supporters of other groups, which then helps a more cooperative political environment. It encourages progress rather than encouraging gridlock, as like how the Westminster parliamentary system does, because people are just holding on to their power and are willing to just filibuster to prevent the other party from making any progress. And so the other thing that it does is it also provides voters with more choice. In a multi-party system where there's multiple parties that are across, a whole bunch of different ideological spectrums, from center right to far left to far right, this allows voters to select candidates who genuinely reflect their politics, right? In contrast to the US two-party system, it forces a binary choice that isn't a representation of the people who are actually voting. They're voting reluctantly, they're reluctantly supporting. Where here, because there's so many, a large span of candidates, and that the combination of how you make that list of candidates, it has a important effect. So all in all, the Ireland electoral system is a great demonstration that voting can be both efficient and highly representative of the populace by allowing voters to basically just express their preferences, and thus ensuring that these preferences are reflected in the election's outcome and the government, right? And so the single transferable vote system offers a good blueprint for democratic systems worldwide. Obviously, electoralism is a dead-end road when it comes to any type of progress that is going to lead to an actual conflict with capitalism. But as far as creating the conditions to make that conflict with capitalism, easier, or just making the conditions better than they would be, electoralism oftentimes is the only road to go down. But a lot of different electoral systems, like Canada's, obviously America's, all over the place, it's the system is not representative. And in some, in Ontario's last election, it only took about 18% of voters to ensure a supermajority for Doug Ford. So the first past the post system absolutely has to go. Even a proportional representation would be better than the first past the post system. But Ireland's system is a great example, and it would be if implemented in other places, it would cause a lot more change than the status quo wants, I guess. So it's definitely time for other countries to modernize their electoral frameworks, and because at some point it's going to be a need, and not just something that is a request. It's you can only build up these contradictions for so long before it has consequences by not giving people a way to express themselves politically in a way that actually matters. So Ireland is a good example of how to do it properly.
Paul, what's it telling us?
Here we go. The data has just come in. Starting left to right, Fianna Fáil 19.5%, Sinn Féin 21.1%, Fine Gael 21%. So we've seen over the past 4 days 3 opinion polls. The top 3 parties were all bunched together, and what do you know? There they are, stuck together. One of the big stories out of 2020 was that Sinn Féin was a coming force. it's confirmed its place, one of the top three parties. Continuing on, the Green Party on 4%, Labour on 5%, the Social Democrats on 5.8%. Once again, the opinion polls have put those three parties pretty close. Again, confirmation, it seems, from the exit poll that that's the case. Continuing on, People Before Profit Solidarity 3.1%, Aintu 3.6%, Independent Ireland, that's the new party, on 2.2%, Independents 12.7%, that's down from 15% in the general election last time, and others 1.9%.
Striking you immediately looking at that, given the nature of the campaign, Fianna Fáil will be disappointed to see themselves there, albeit there's a margin of error and it is a poll.
It is tight. Yes, they had expected that would be moving forward. It seems that they're a little bit behind there. The second thing which strikes me is because it's so close, this is too close to call exactly what's going to happen. Looking forward, it seems to me that if you're looking at Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, that joint vote together is substantial. And I think because we've got a slightly larger Dáil with 14 extra seats, with a majority of 87%, if you're just looking at that, it seems two things. One, that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael will probably need two parties to form a coalition government, and it also still looks difficult to see how Sinn Féin could form a left-leaning government.
It's a margin of error of 1.4%, but if you're looking at that, it makes coalition formation simpler than one might have expected, does it?
Well, this is it. But what we'll all want to do is those ballot boxes open at 9 o'clock in the morning. We'll have sort of first counts by early afternoon, and that's really where you'll be able to make a decision. But just looking at there, that seems the way it's going. Yeah.
And we can say now that we do have the results of the exit poll in. Paul, what's it telling us?
Here we go. The data has just come in. Starting left to right, Fianna Fáil 19.5%.
Point. So if the thing is that in the world that I operate in, we got 24% in the last election. We got X percent of seats.
That's about 8 or 9 behind.
So that's not going to happen. Plus, you can see even in the Vox Pop there, far more transfer attractive with the parties on the left. Even if we might get a few twos from. I actually canvassed Leo Varadkar the other night and asked for his number 2, and he didn't fall over. He kind of nodded politely and said, "I'll think about it," which is a yes. I think that's a yes.
No, he's a for a long time about that one.
To be fair to Shane, because I know all of our candidates are exhausted tonight, and I'm not even sure why you're still smiling other than the numbers that we've just got this evening, because they've worked really, really hard over the last.
Yeah.
Interesting to note. You are down probably more percentage points on the 2020 election than Fianna Fáil are. So you think you've won today, you think they've lost today. Everything is
our strategy is entirely. We took a very bold political strategic decision to add candidates like me, and I see that in the context of Sinn Féin do make strategic decisions. We've seen them over the last 30-35.
It's still hard though on a reduced vote. I mean, even in your own constituency, I know Angus romped home last time.
He got
his vote
he
will
got
be
2.5 quotas. Well, we don't know that.
Well, based on this poll, it will be down nationally.
Not necessarily, because his vote may not be down. It might be down in some other area. I mean, we had a very, very, very strong.
But he had no running mate last time. He has
2.5, which drags out a greater number of votes. You drill down deeper, you work harder, you have more teams, you're spreading yourselves thinner, and I'd be very confident that our vote will increase in South.
But you have to put it in context. Like, go back 18 months. Sinn Féin were on 35-36%. I remember talking to a senior Sinn Féin person, and he reckoned to me, and he wasn't being arrogant, absolutely not at all. He reckoned that if things kept the way they were, it could go up to 40. And there was this idea that Sinn Féin was the vehicle for a change among a large minority of people for whom the politics was not being served despite the economy. But you're still in a different planet from those days.
But also two things. The exit poll, and it is only an exit poll, has us as the largest party with a whisker. We're the largest party, and that's real politics. That was an opinion poll when there was no debate or discussion about who will be in charge of finance, foreign affairs, justice.
But then does that mean that you don't think that
sometimes
wasn't true?
sorry, just let me finish for a sec. Sometimes there is a bounce for a party in opposition in between elections. Here we have real politics. People, according to the exit poll, voted. We got a larger percentage of vote than any other party, and that's when we're focusing absolutely with laser-like precision on taxes, housing, foreign affairs, justice, and they're choosing us. That's a very, very different than the last couple of elections where we're consistently growing in number of seats.
So quite a few people. Fair,
go on.
Sorry, Sean, I was going to bring you in. to be fair, and I don't want to be raining on anybody's parade because tonight obviously is a good night where people are happy with the results. By 0.1% is what the margin of error, or what the percentage difference between yourself and Sinn Féin, Fine Gael is showing you. When you combine Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Green Party together, you're nowhere close to the response that the current government has got from the electorate today. And when I look at the responses, and it's not just, we talked about the second preference system where they're transferring, I now have information as to the Fianna Fáil vote transferring to Fine Gael, the Fine Gael vote transferring to Fianna Fáil, it's between 30 and 40% of a transfer. That's not going to be a reality for Sinn Féin tomorrow, no matter how friendly you think you are towards people.
So that's it. Sorry, 30% of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil number twos are going to each other. Is that what?
30% of Fianna Fáil votes are transferring to Fine Gael. 37%, we're obviously softer or nicer people. 37% of Fine Gael vote transfers are going to Fianna Fáil. That will give a significant bounce. Seat bonus, whatever way you want to call it, over and above the 21% Fine Gael first preference and the 19.5% Fianna Fáil. That won't be the same reflection with.
And but a copper fast is what we were saying is that right during this election, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, you vote for one, you get the other. We've been saying that for the whole duration of the election.
But is that not your problem?
No,
that you are going to vote for the two of them and they'll go into government together, whereas you're going to kill off other left-wing candidates by getting second Sinn Féin, and you can't get to that 86 magic number.
What we have said for years was Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael were more or less cut from the same cloth, and there was this false sense of one in opposition, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, Fianna Fáil, Tweedledee or Tweedledum, as Mary Lou would say. And now we have the real politics. Fianna Fáil and Fianna, you vote for one, you get the other. While Sinn Féin are the lead opposition, we are the lead left-wing party, and we are creating a different sort of politics in this state that hasn't been there.
There's another way of looking at it too, and that is, to be fair to Sinn Féin, absolutely done much better than the polls suggested earlier, and fair play, and they are the main opposition party. However, in a year in which practically every election across the world throughout the incumbents, it is notable that they certainly haven't got a hammering here in any sense
and
at
they
all.
very easily could still be returned to government. Thanks to the panel, Daithí Doolan of Sinn Féin, Regina Doherty of Fine Gael, and Mick Clifford from the Irish Examiner. Thanks for joining us on this exit poll show. We're going to be back with plenty more analysis, plenty more drop-ins with candidates across the country after this news.
All right, so it seems that they are not actually counting until Saturday morning, so 4 a.m. our time. So maybe that will be when I return.